You've probably seen it all over social media, right? Colostrum. It's everywhere. Well, today we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to dive deep and give you a really clear, evidence-based look at what this is all about, separating the real science from the hype. So let's get right into it. So, what's the deal here? That's the big question we're tackling. Can this stuff, this first milk, really fix your gut? I mean, with all the crazy claims flying around out there, it's pretty easy to get lost. So let's go on a little investigative journey together and see what the actual research has to say. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about why everyone is suddenly so obsessed with colostrum. Then, we'll get to know the key biological players involved. After that, we'll unpack the main theory of how it's supposed to work, check out what the science actually says, and finally, we'll put it all in perspective. So seriously, why is everyone talking about this all of a sudden? That's what we're calling the first milk phenomenon. But let's be super clear right from the start. Our goal here isn't to sell you on some quick fix. This is purely an educational overview, so you can understand what scientists are actually looking at, what the evidence shows, and, just as importantly, where the gaps are. Okay, so to really get a handle on this whole conversation, we need to meet the key players first. It's kind of like meeting the main characters in a movie before the plot really gets going. Let's start with the absolute basics. First up is the gut microbiome. And listen, this isn't just a couple of bacteria hanging out. It's a massive, incredibly complex community, a whole world living inside your gut. And your personal mix is totally unique, influenced by literally everything from what you eat and how you sleep to your stress levels. And now for our star player, colostrum. It's that very first milk that mammals produce right after giving birth. Now, here's a super important distinction we have to make. Human colostrum is tailor-made for human newborns. The supplements you see on the shelves, that's bovine colostrum from cows. They have things in common, for sure, but that difference is absolutely crucial when we look at the research. So what makes colostrum so different from just regular milk? Well, it really boils down to one word: concentration. Colostrum is absolutely jam-packed with a much, much higher level of these special bioactive compounds, like growth factors. That's why you'll hear scientists call it a transition milk. It's not for day-to-day nutrition. It's a special formula designed for that super critical early life gut adaptation. Okay, we know the players. So how is this stuff supposed to work in an adult gut anyway? Well, this brings us to the main scientific idea, something called the gut barrier theory. Your intestinal barrier is so important, it's hard to overstate. It's literally the gatekeeper standing between everything you digest in your gut and the rest of your body. The security checkpoint analogy is perfect. It's this incredibly smart system that decides exactly what gets a pass to enter your system and what gets kept out. This chart really gets to the heart of what scientists are thinking. See, those same growth factors that are vital for building a newborn's entire intestinal system, researchers are now studying them in adults to see if they might play a totally different role, like maybe supporting the gut during periods of intense physical stress. The key thing here is that the proposed job changes completely, from development to support. All right, we've walked through the theory, but now it's time for the most important part. What does the actual, peer-reviewed, published research have to say? This is where the rubber meets the road, and we separate the hard science from all that social media speculation. Now, this is so important to understand. The research is very, very specific. Scientists are looking at things like markers of the gut barrier in healthy people, often in very specific groups like athletes or people under stress. And notice that last point. They are studying markers of immune signaling, not claiming to treat or cure diseases. That distinction is everything. So, what are these studies actually finding? Well, if you're looking for a simple yes or no, you're not going to find it here. The results are kind of all over the map. The effects seen in athletes might be totally different from what you'd see in the general population. And it all seems to depend heavily on the specific dose and the type of product used. There's just no one-size-fits-all answer right now. If you take away just one thing from this whole section, please let it be this. This quote perfectly sums up where the science is at today. Conclusions are cautious rather than definitive. Scientists are being very careful here. They are not making big, bold claims because the evidence we have so far is really preliminary and pretty limited. So with that very cautious note in mind, where does colostrum even fit into the bigger picture of gut health? Let's try to put it into context with some of the other wellness strategies you're probably already familiar with. Yeah, it's really helpful to think of these as different tools for different jobs, not as competitors. Probiotics or fermented foods, for example, are all about introducing live microbes directly into your system. Colostrum, on the other hand, is thought to work differently by supplying components that might influence the environment that your existing microbes live in. They're just two different approaches. Now, if you are thinking about any supplement, these practical points are absolutely essential to remember. The quality of these products can be wildly different. The dose and formulation really do matter. And of course, if you have a milk allergy or you're lactose intolerant, you have to be extra careful. The best advice always is to talk to a professional. And that really brings us full circle, back to the ultimate takeaway. While scientists are studying some of these compounds for their potential, colostrum is not some magic bullet. The absolute foundation, the central pillar of good gut health, remains exactly what it has always been: a balanced diet and a healthy lifestyle. So, we'll end with a question for you to chew on. Looking beyond the hype of any single product, what role does actual evidence, real, cautious, scientific evidence, play in your own personal wellness journey? Because at the end of the day, staying informed and being evidence-aware is always the best path forward. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.